There exists a threshold in the human experience, a liminal space whispered about in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, a frontier that has captivated the human imagination since we first became aware of our own mortality. It is the edge of life itself, the final border crossing from which we are told no traveler returns. And yet, a profound and growing body of testimony insists that this is not entirely true. There are those who have stood upon that precipice, felt the wind of the infinite on their faces, and have been, by some twist of fate or medical miracle, pulled back into the confines of the body and the ticking of the clock. They return with stories. These are not the fragmented, drug-induced, hazy memories of a dream, but narratives of startling clarity, consistency, and transformative power that together form a vast, hidden library of human experience. This collection of accounts, this chorus of voices from the brink, offers us something extraordinary. Not a definitive map of the afterlife, for such a thing may be beyond mortal comprehension, but a startling new lens through which to examine the very nature of consciousness, reality, and what it means to be a soul having a human experience, rather than a human occasionally glimpsing a soul. To engage with the hidden science of near-death experiences is to embark on an investigation that challenges the very foundations of our materialist worldview. It is to look upon the cold, hard data of cardiac arrest survival rates and EEG flatlines and find within them the warm, luminous reports of a consciousness that not only continues but expands, unfettered by the biological machinery we assumed was its sole source of power. This is not a call to abandon science, but to expand its scope, to dare to ask questions that hover at the very edge of the knowable. It is a science that must be conducted with both a neurologist's scanner and a poet's heart, for the phenomenon it seeks to understand is one that is measured equally in brainwaves and in boundless love, in temporal lobe activity and in timeless revelation. We are, in effect, piecing together a cosmology from the inside out, using the first-hand reports of explorers who have ventured into the deepest interior of existence and returned with fragments of a breathtaking panorama. Imagine for a moment that we have been living our entire lives in a magnificent, yet windowless, chamber. We have studied its walls in exquisite detail. We understand the chemistry of its paint, the physics of its architecture, the biology of its other inhabitants. We have constructed complex and beautiful philosophies about our chamber, believing it to be the entirety of existence. The accounts of near-death experiencers are like someone suddenly discovering a door we never knew was there, cracked open just enough to allow a sliver of a blinding, incomprehensible light to pour through. They speak of realities where love is not an emotion but a tangible substance, where time folds in upon itself like a piece of origami, and where a review of one's life is not a judgment, but a profound education in the interconnectedness of every thought, word, and deed. This is the grand invitation extended by this research, to consider that our chamber, for all its wonder, is but an antechamber to something vaster, more complex, and more beautiful than we have ever allowed ourselves to conceive. This journey we are about to undertake together is not merely an academic exercise. It is an exploration of the ultimate human mystery. It is about weaving together the threads of clinical study and transcendent narrative to see what pattern emerges. We will listen to the echoes of thousands who have traversed the tunnel, met the light, and returned irrevocably changed. Their stories are the raw data of the soul, a cumulative testament that points toward a reality far grander and more purposeful than the random, mechanical universe we often fear we inhabit. They offer not proof, but evidence, not dogma, but a compelling invitation to wonder. So let us begin at this threshold, with humility and open curiosity, ready to explore what these extraordinary voyages beyond the veil of death can reveal about the breathtaking potential of life. Of course. Let us now step through that conceptual doorway and into the heart of the matter, to explore the recurring motifs that form the bedrock of this extraordinary phenomenon. These are not merely isolated anecdotes, but rather the fundamental pillars, the deep architecture of an experience that seems to be encoded into the very fabric of our transition. When thousands of individuals across cultures, ages, and belief systems Returned from the edge of non-existence, singing harmonies of the same overwhelming song, we must lean in and listen to its core melodies. These themes are the consistent threads woven through the tapestry of testimony, revealing a pattern so coherent it demands a radical reevaluation of where we end and where the universe begins. One of the most universal opening movements in this symphony of the soul is the profound separation from the physical body, often described with a clarity that defies the chaos of medical trauma. Individuals find themselves floating, a point of awareness untethered from weight and pain, looking down upon the frantic efforts of doctors and the strangely intimate yet distant shell of their own form. This is not a fuzzy out-of-body sensation, but a hyper-real state of being, where perception is sharpened to an impossible degree, often including verifiable details of the room, the instruments, the conversations, details they could not have possibly perceived through normal sensory channels. This phenomenon strikes a devastating blow to the conventional model that consciousness is a mere byproduct of the brain, a flickering candle extinguished by the slightest wind. For if the brain is offline, clinically dead, how does this observing consciousness not only persist, but operate with enhanced panoramic acuity? It suggests that the brain may be less a generator and more a receiver, a sophisticated filter that translates the vast, noisy signal of universal consciousness into the narrow, manageable bandwidth of earthly survival. Then there is the journey itself, so frequently narrated as a movement through a tunnel or a void, a conduit through dimensions that accelerates toward an indescribable light. This is not a frightening, consuming darkness, but a passageway filled with a sense of homecoming and profound peace. The light that awaits at its terminus is consistently described as a consciousness itself, all-knowing, all-encompassing, and radiating a love of such pure, unconditional intensity that it defies all earthly comparison. This is not the love of emotion, but love as the fundamental substance of existence, a physics of the soul where vibration and affection are one and the same. Within this presence, communication happens not through language, but through a direct, instantaneous transfer of knowing, a boundless empathy that understands every facet of one's being without a hint of judgment. It is here that many speak of the life review, a panoramic reliving of every moment of one's existence, not from one's own perspective, but from the perspective of every other person affected by one's actions. One feels the joy they gave, but also the pain they caused, not as a punishment, but as the ultimate curriculum in empathy, a visceral understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. This process is described not as a judgment by the light, but a self-judgment guided by infinite compassion, a revelation that the only metric that truly matters is how much we have loved. And woven through all these stages is the encounter with other beings, whether perceived as guides, ancestors, or religious figures tailored to the individual's understanding, who assist in this transition and impart a sense of purpose and knowledge. A common and perhaps most poignant theme is the overwhelming, even reluctant return to the body. Having tasted this oceanic love and peace, the pull back into the limited, painful, and heavy physical form is often met with resistance. They return not out of desire, but out of a sense of duty, an understanding that a purpose remains unfulfilled, often related to love, service, or the raising of children. They come back carrying an unshakable memory of this light, which invariably transforms them, dissolving the fear of death and instilling a new, urgent imperative to live a life of authenticity, compassion, and connection. The core revelation is not of a distant heaven to be reached after a life of suffering, but of a fundamental truth, that the universe is not cold and empty, but is built upon a foundation of conscious, intelligent love, and that our essential self is not a temporary accident of biology, but an eternal participant in this magnificent, unfolding reality. Indeed. To truly comprehend the magnitude of these experiences, we must move beyond a mere cataloging of events and venture into the realm of the allegorical, where these core themes coalesce into profound symbolic narratives. These are the stories within the story, the deeper currents that give shape to the river of testimony, revealing not just what happens, but what it means. They are the parables written in the language of the soul, each one a key designed to unlock a different chamber within our understanding of existence. They suggest that the journey beyond the veil is not a random firing of a dying brain, but a meticulously structured, deeply personal, and immensely educational process, a guided tour through the architecture of the self and its place in the cosmos. Consider the powerful symbolism of the life review, an event so common it forms a cornerstone of the NDE narrative. This is far more than a simple replay of memories. It is a profound ritual of understanding. Imagine every moment of your life, every word spoken, every action taken, every thought held in secret, unfolding not as a linear film, but as a living tapestry where every thread is connected. You do not merely see the time you snapped at a loved one in frustration, you instantly and fully experience the ripple of that moment from their perspective. You feel their confusion, their hurt, the subsequent actions they took that were colored by that pain. But you also feel the origins of your own frustration, the chain of events that led to your breaking point, fostering not guilt, but a breathtaking, systemic comprehension of cause and effect. This is the universe's ultimate teaching tool, a curriculum of compassion. It symbolizes the fundamental law of interconnection, that no being is an island, and every action is a stone cast into a pond whose shores are infinite. The judgment felt is never external, it is the self, armed with ultimate clarity, finally understanding the weight of its own existence. The lesson is not one of punishment, but of education. We are here to learn how our choices affect the whole. Another profound symbolic narrative is the encounter with the barrier or the point of no return. A gate, a river, a mist, or simply a vibrational threshold that many describe being unable to cross. This boundary is rich with meaning. It represents the immutable law of destiny and purpose. Those who reach it are not turned back by a stern gatekeeper, but by a knowing, an innate understanding that to cross is to complete the earthly journey, to sever the silver cord entirely. For those whose time in the grand scheme of their soul's journey is not yet complete, the boundary is absolute. It symbolizes that our incarnation is not a random sentence, but a chosen curriculum, a contract with specific lessons to be learned and work to be done. The return is not a failure, but an obedience to a deeper will, a calling back to the classroom of earthly life to integrate the wisdom gleaned from the glimpse beyond. It transforms life from a meaningless struggle into a purposeful mission, where every joy and every heartache is part of a soul's chosen path toward growth. Perhaps the most beautiful and challenging symbolic narrative is the encounter with the light itself. This is consistently described not as a thing, but as a being, not a location, but a state of consciousness characterized by pure, unconditional love and omniscient knowledge. To encounter this light is to be known utterly and to be loved absolutely, precisely because of that utter knowing. This being does not ask about dogma or religious affiliation. It asks, through a wordless transmission, what wisdom have you forged from your living? How deeply have you loved? This light is the ultimate symbol of Source, the divine core from which all consciousness emanates. It is the home we instinctively recognize and yearn for. Its nature suggests that the fundamental force at the heart of all creation is not cold, indifferent matter, but conscious, intelligent love. This single symbol, repeated with stunning consistency across countless accounts, dismantles the paradigm of a lonely, accidental universe and replaces it with a vision of a universe yearning for connection. A conscious reality that is not separate from us, but is our most essential, original state. We are not strangers in a strange land. We are droplets of this oceanic light, temporarily individualized to experience and contribute our unique perspective to the whole. The entire near-death experience can be seen as a symbolic journey of the droplet, remembering it is part of the ocean, and the ocean, in its infinite love, reassuring the droplet of its eternal belonging. The luminous truths gleaned from the edge of eternity would hold little value if they remained as mere stories, beautiful but distant constellations in the sky of human curiosity. Their real power, their radical import, is revealed only when they are brought down to earth, integrated into the marrow of our daily existence. The journey beyond the veil is not an escape from life, but an ultimate affirmation of it, a clarion call to live differently, to see the familiar world through utterly new eyes. The transformation reported by those who return is not a private spiritual trophy. It is a blueprint for a revolution in human consciousness, a practical guide etched in the light of the infinite for how to navigate the finite. This is where the cosmic becomes personal, where the vision of an all-loving source translates into tangible shifts in how we walk, talk, love, and suffer in the world of form. Perhaps the most immediate and profound real-world implication is the utter dissolution of the fear of death. For those who have truly absorbed the NDE testimony, not as anecdote but as evidence, death is no longer the terrifying unknown, the great adversary, or the final full stop. It is reframed as a transition, a homecoming, a shedding of the physical vessel to return to a more expansive state of being. This is not a passive nihilism, a nothing matters dismissal of life. On the contrary, it is the foundation for a fierce and liberated engagement with living. When the crushing anxiety of ultimate annihilation is lifted, a tremendous amount of energy is freed. This energy can be redirected into living more authentically, taking risks for love and creativity, because the ultimate consequence, oblivion, has been removed from the equation. The focus shifts from a desperate clinging to survival to a passionate exploration of meaning. This shift has been observed in countless experiencers, who often abandon shallow pursuits and materialistic ambitions to pursue paths of service, connection, and authentic self-expression. They understand on a cellular level that they are not here to accumulate, but to contribute, not to hide, but to reveal. This liberation from fear births a second, crucial implication, a radical reorientation towards relationships. The life review, that symbolic heart of the experience, is ultimately a lesson in empathy. It demonstrates, in the most visceral way possible, that our lives are not isolated monologues, but deeply entangled conversations. Every interaction is an exchange of energy that ripples out through the web of connection. Knowing this, or even seriously contemplating it, changes how we engage with the cashier, the colleague, the family member, the stranger. It invites a new level of personal responsibility, not responsibility driven by guilt or dogma, but by a conscious understanding of our role as co-creators of the emotional and psychic environment around us. The question ceases to be, what can I get from this interaction? And becomes, what quality of energy am I contributing through this interaction? This fosters a culture of profound kindness, not as a moral obligation, but as a practical application of a spiritual truth. We are all fundamentally connected, and the well-being of the whole is intimately tied to the well-being of each part. Furthermore, the encounter with the omniscient, loving light suggests a fundamental correction to our understanding of the divine or the ultimate nature of reality. If the core of all that is characterized by unconditional love and knowingness, then the universe is not indifferent, mechanical, or judgmental in the petty human sense. This insight dismantles the internalized critic, the voice of conditional worth that plagues so many. If the source of all creation embraces us with absolute love, seeing every flaw and failure within the context of our soul's journey, then who are we to withhold that same compassion from ourselves and others? This leads to a practice of deep self-forgiveness and the extension of grace to others, recognizing that everyone is on their own arduous path of learning. It encourages a spirituality based not on fear of punishment or hope for reward, but on a loving alignment with a universe that is itself love. This translates into quieter inner worlds, less judgmental communities, and a move away from religious dogmas that thrive on separation and fear, toward a more unitive, inclusive understanding of the sacred woven into the very fabric of daily life. The message is not to await a salvation in the next life, but to recognize the sacredness of this one, to become a living conduit for the very light that beckons from beyond the veil, right here, right now, in every choice we make. The tapestry is now woven, each thread, the clinical data, the universal themes, the deep symbolic narratives, the practical implications, interlacing to form a picture that is both staggering in its implications and intimately personal in its call. We began at the threshold, peering into a mystery that has haunted humanity since its dawn, and we have journeyed through the evidence that this mystery is not a void, but a plenum, not an end, but a transition. We have listened to the chorus of thousands, a symphony of accounts that transcends culture, creed, and circumstance, all singing a harmonious song of a reality more magnificent and loving than our earthly senses have ever allowed us to perceive. This is not a matter of faith in the traditional sense, but an emergent paradigm, a convergence of subjective experience that points toward an objective truth about the nature of consciousness itself. We are left not with a simple answer, but with a profound invitation to reconsider everything we thought we knew about life, death, and the invisible architecture that connects them. The transformational call embedded in this exploration is not to blindly believe every story, but to courageously consider the pattern they create. It is a call to allow this new understanding to seep into the cracks of our old certainties, to loosen the rigid grip of a purely materialist worldview that can often feel barren and isolating. This is an invitation to live as if the universe is conscious, as if love is the fundamental substrate of existence, and as if our actions truly matter in an interconnected web of sentient life. This is not a passive spirituality, it is an active engagement with reality. It asks us to live with the kind of authenticity that comes from knowing our time here is both purposeful and temporary, a school for the soul, not a waiting room for death. It challenges us to shed the trivial anxieties and manufactured dramas that consume so much of our energy and to focus instead on the core curriculum of the life review. How much have I loved? How deeply have I connected? How courageously have I forgiven? How willingly have I served? This knowledge is a light that does not merely illuminate the path beyond, it casts its glow backward onto the path we walk now. The world does not change, but our perception of it is irrevocably altered. The stranger on the street is no longer a separate entity, but a fellow traveler, a spark of the same essential light navigating their own complex journey. A moment of failure is no longer a mark of damnation, but a necessary lesson in the soul's expansive education. The beauty of a sunset or the laughter of a child is no longer a pleasant distraction, but a direct whisper from that world of light, a reminder of the love that underpins all of form. To integrate this is to find the sacred in the ordinary, to see the infinite shimmering just beneath the surface of the finite. It is to become an ambassador of that light in a world that often feels shrouded in shadow, to practice a radical empathy that understands every interaction as a sacred exchange. Ultimately, the hidden science of near-death experiences reveals that the greatest discovery is not of a distant heaven, but of our own true nature. We are not fragile biological accidents soon to be erased by time. We are eternal consciousness, temporarily focused through the lens of a physical body, having a human experience. The journey to the light and back is a journey to the core of the self and return. The love encountered is not outside of us, it is our source and our destination. The call, then, is the most personal and profound one imaginable. To stop living as if you are a solitary self navigating a meaningless universe, and to begin living from the truth of who you are, an integral note in the symphony of a conscious cosmos, a beloved participant in a grand unfolding story of love remembering itself. The brush with death is not about the end, it is about the beginning of truly living. The question that remains is not what awaits us after we die, but how we will choose to live, now that we have glimpsed the light.